Good morning, friends. Chaliye, let's close our eyes. So a very quick recap. ठीक है बिटिया, what did we study in the last lecture? M.N. Srinivas's views on caste. What does he say on caste? Very good. Wealth and power or secular hierarchy as well as ritual hierarchy, both are important and they are related. Absolutely. Carry that forward. Very good. He criticizes the views of Dumo as well as Marxist interpretations of caste. Why? On what grounds? Bilkul, Dumo gives utmost importance to ritual purity. Come on, why secular? Dumo gives utmost importance to ritual purity, and Marxists are on the other end of the spectrum by giving overemphasis on the material or economic conditions, ignoring ritual aspects. But according to Srinivas, both are important. And how they affect each other, he brought forth very well in his concept of, brother, Sanskritization, which means what? Define Sanskritization. Very good, very good. The process by which a lower caste, I'll make a small addition, or tribe, a lower caste or tribe imitates or adopts the rituals, customs, language, attire, right? And lifestyle of higher, frequently Dwij Varn castes. Okay? So when a lower caste undergoes Sanskritization, what aspects it may adopt? क्या करेगी मतलब अगर कोई sanskritizing lower caste होगी? For example, give me concrete things they may do. नहीं, not 1 second, not this बेटा. AC का देखो ना, टेम्परेचर बहुत ज्यादा है इनका, सबका ठीक कर दो प्लीज. हाँ. How upper caste live in terms of what? How they live is a very broad and vague thing. Okay, like going on pilgrimages to holy places, like changing their food habits in imitation of the Dwijvarn castes, applying tilak on the forehead, wearing dhoti, otherwise were they like without dhoti? In the style of the caste being imitated, wearing dhoti like the higher caste. Or language, kaisi language? Words like moksha, it has become so exotic. It brings a smile to our face, unfortunately. ऐसे नहीं होगी हमें कभी भी मोक्ष प्राप्ति. Or rituals like havan, pilgrimage हो चुका है and you know it. Or restricting women. It takes a mahila to point that out. Putting restrictions on women like the higher castes. On what kind of restrictions you expect could be put on women? On employment, just employment, dowry, even mobility, है ना? कदम क्यों रखोगे घर से बाहर, क्या जरूरत है, घर में इतना बढ़िया बढ़िया खाना बना सकती हो जब आप, ठीक है. Then criticisms of the concept of Sanskritization. Sorry, asking you another question in its lieu. What is the motivation for Sanskritization? Why does a lower caste imitate the lifestyle of an upper caste? According to Srinivas. Huh. 1 second. Huh? Whenever we are responding to even a written question, okay, you are right now answering me orally, but even when you are doing so in writing, if a question is like, what is the, let's say hypothetically, what is the motivation for Sanskritization? You are elaborating on the concept by a particular scholar, which is M.N. Srinivas. Then, while answering it, you have to do so, it is somewhat implicit or assumed that you have to do so from the perspective of the scholar under consideration. Any criticisms can be an add-on or a later thing, but primarily from the perspective of the scholar, please. To gain a ritually to gain a higher rank in the ritual hierarchy. So why is this need felt? Very good. They feel a disconnect. Continue. What do you mean? What do you mean they feel a disconnect with the upper caste? Sorry. पढ़ के बोला तो क्या बोला? I know you are that much well read. Sorry. Incorrect. Again, you are repeating her. They feel a disconnect between the social status. Yes. Elaborate. Yes, because they have money, typically they have money and power, so they rank high in the secular hierarchy, but they rank low in the ritual hierarchy. That disconnect is what typically prompts efforts towards Sanskritization. Criticisms of Sanskritization, brother? No, that's not a criticism. That's like how things are. The fact that Sanskritization is a community phenomena and not individual level, that is not a criticism of the concept of Sanskritization. Sorry? Again, that's not a criticism. The fact that Sanskritization is a slow process is the nature of the phenomena. We have to criticize Srinivas's formulation of the concept of Sanskritization. ठीक है ना? आप इस एंगल से कर रहे हो कि ये जल्दी क्यों नहीं कर सकते? That's not the point. We have to say जो श्रीनिवास ने कहा है वो क्यों गलत है या the opposite seems to be happening. Brother. Very good. Srinivas portrays Sanskritization as elite emulation, but very good. According to Harold Gold, it should be seen as a form of protest or defiance. Wonderful. Bitya. Yes. De-Sanskritization is taking place according to D.N. Majumdar, which means what? Bitya. हाँ, नहीं पढ़ा? क्यों? Please be this thing, yeah. You had a whole weekend, right? Bitya. First class. After 2 months. Why you seem very familiar face? ठीक है, कोई बात नहीं. हाँ? Chill. I mean, don't chill for too long, but it's okay for now. Catch up. है ना? Good. Good to hear that, brother. Higher castes are giving up their practices. ठीक है. Bitya, another. Kancha Ilaya says that, brother, thank you, Bitya. नाम बता के दिल जीत लिया आपने. Brother. What is taking place? Dalitization, meaning now Dalit lifestyle is gaining traction and becoming popular. ठीक है. Another. No. Sanskritization has been slowing down due to westernization, according to critics. What is dominant caste? अच्छा, ठीक है. Brother, dominant caste. Those which outnumber other castes. Is outnumbering sufficient to become dominant? No, not always, never. In itself, numerical superiority alone is not sufficient to become dominant. Okay, but numerical superiority along with other features like modern education का access और बिटिया गवर्नमेंट जॉब्स, वेल्थ, ऐसे रटा होना चाहिए. समझा भी प्लस रटा भी, है ना. वंडरफुल. नो, दैट्स, आई एम नॉट सेइंग इन जेस्ट और ओके, आई एम सेइंग इट इन ऑल ऑनेस्टी. दैट इज हाउ इट शुड बी ऑन योर फिंगर टिप्स. गुड, कंटिन्यू. व्हाट डिड शी मिस आउट ऑन? पावर. हाँ, ठीक है. और वेल्थ कैसे होती है रूरल एरियाज में? Land or cattle ownership, typically or conventionally. Is Sanskritization, brother, a new phenomena? It's not a new phenomena. It's been going on since ages. And is it also happening in modern Indian society? No, but as per Srinivas, yes, ठीक है. Bitya, engrossed in your notes, great, but you should have also done that during the weekend. Give me examples of dominant castes. Jats and Yadavs in Haryana. Haryana में Yadavs भी हैं क्या? Are they like, Yadavs are like more, should I say, properly dominant, explicitly dominant in Bihar and Uttar Pradesh. Haryana में मतलब they are like runners up. ठीक है. And who would be like, say, अच्छा, और बताइए examples, बिटिया. Yes. Patels in Gujarat. Pariahs in Kerala. Periya. Are you from Kerala? Okay, then I should contest it. If you are you, how do you spell that? Periyar. Periyar was a leader, or it's a term used for the elder one, or like, something, the parallel of what, like something like Mahatma or the wise one, the great one, which was used for E.V. Ramaswamy Naikar, right? So there is a community by the name of Paraya, from which you get the English term Paraya, P-A-R-A-Y-A in Kerala, from which you get the English term P-A-R-I-R-A-I-A-H, something like that, Paraya. Paraya in English means an outcast. So the Parayas of Kerala, they are a scheduled caste. Okay? Other examples, Bitya. I didn't attend. Where are you from? Rajasthan mein who dominates? Which community? Rajputs. So this is it. है ना? Rajputs of Rajasthan. Seriously, that is how intuitive the subject can be if we link it to where we live. ठीक? Brother. Maharashtra में Shinde, all protesting quite continuously. बहुत सारे हैं. ठीक है, ये मत लिखना. हाँ. Will notes be provided apart from the running notes? There will be portions which are dictated. There are also handouts which are shared with you, plus the running notes that you're making, Ruchi. One doubt or two have joined the course late, currently in sociological research. Gitansh, you get in touch with me for these questions, either to specific to be of any interest to a wider audience. So you get in touch with me on call. Yeah. Any quick doubts, brother? Okay. His question is well taken. His question is that we discussed desanskritization to mean upper caste giving up Sanskritic cultural practices. But somewhere he came across that perhaps lower caste also undergo desanskritization, and that is also absolutely right. Desanskritization can mean upper castes giving up elements of Sanskritic culture which they were earlier following. It can also mean some lower caste which had undergone Sanskritization, now giving up elements of that Sanskritic culture. Okay? So, for example, in India, for availing reservation benefits, many communities are now claiming backwardness. Now claiming backwardness. While they were earlier trying to show, for example, during the British census, several communities were claiming higher status. So they had undergone Sanskritization to justify their claims and show that we belong to an upper ritual rank. But then, thanks to the politics of reservation, after independence, many communities have undergone desanskritization. Are you with me? So that is absolutely right. Okay, why would higher castes undergo desanskritization? Why would higher castes give up elements of Sanskritic culture? It could be because simply it is no more fashionable or of utility. Since Sanskritic cultural elements no more signify higher status, many communities which were, upper caste to begin with and were following these customs for long, they have no reason to continue to stick to them. In fact, if you continue to stick to Sanskritic culture, it may be taken as a sign of orthodoxy. Yes or no? Bitya. There comes a feminist perspective to protest against the patriarchal family structure, etc. मैं नहीं करूंगी करवा चौथ. ठीक है? How dare you even expect that from me? चलिए अब चलते हैं जीवन में आगे. Will we be discussing 2025 paper? Not in the class, but I intend to take it up and share with you guys in the form of a lecture. Mohan is asking, Srinivas criticized Dumo for being reductionist, which is he reduced the whole of caste system to solely the ideology of opposition of pure and impure. So he's asking, then what are the other principles of caste other than the opposition of pure and impure? Okay? That is the question posed by a student, Mohan. So the other things which should have, according to Srinivas, been factored in any analysis of caste should also be wealth, power, occupation, income, access to resources, so many other things. It's not just about that ritual aspect of opposition of pure and impure. ठीक है? चलिए अब चलते हैं. Let us move to the fourth and last scholar whose name is mentioned by name in the syllabus on caste, Sri Andre Bete. Andre Bete, friends. Have I given you any brief about him? No. कहां का लड़का है? French, Indian. Though you are not entirely wrong, but you are not right. His father was a Frenchman and his mother was a Bengali Brahmin woman. Okay, and उनके मिलन से पैदा हुए श्री आंद्रे बेते and 100% शुद्ध Indian citizenship. And he's also a fluent Bengali speaker, if that matters. ठीक है? Andre Bete, friends, to give you a sense, Ramachandra Guha, you've heard of him? Noted historian. Apart from Romila Thapar, the only one we come across in our GS or UPSC preparation. And he's like our resident public intellectual. Ramachandra Guha described Andre Bete as the wisest man in India. ठीक है? गुहा जी के हिसाब से he is the wisest man in India. So Guha is literally in love with Andre Bete. He says, if there's one academic or professor whom I truly and really respect and love, it is Bete. Bete की जीवनी नहीं आएगी, by the way, but just to give you a sense of the importance of the guy in Indian academia. Bete delivered a lecture coming to his views on caste. He's also, just to, if I have to rub in his importance, I would say he's also a Padma Bhushan awardee. He's also a, what should I say? He's, received this epithet of a national professor. Okay. He's the professor emeritus in Delhi University. He's also the vice chancellor of one of the universities, right? He's taught in most premier academic spaces like Oxford University, Cambridge University, London School of Economics. Okay? And also one of the most reputed seats of sociological research and academic in India, namely DU के अंदर Delhi School of Economics. Delhi School of Economics. In any case, so this guy, he began his career with the Delhi School of Economics. Okay, and in 1990s or so, he began his career long back. He's like right now 90 plus. Okay, and still around. So when he began his career in Delhi School of Economics, he says, I was surrounded by economists. This was sometime around, 1950s and 60s. Because it was the hub of economics. That was the main subject. Also at the Department of Sociology, which he joined as a young professor. Okay, at the young age of 24, 25, something like that, he began teaching. And he says, when I joined the Delhi School of Economics, and he's right, giving this in a public lecture in 1990s or so. So he's reminiscing or looking back on his academic career. He says, when I began my teaching career in Delhi School of Economics, and I decided to take up research on caste, my colleagues at Delhi School of Economics, who were very prominent economists of the day, they ridiculed me. They mocked me. And these were some of the most reputed names in Indian economics, like V.M. Dandekar, K.N. Raj. I don't know if you've heard of them. Amartya Sen. These guys were his colleagues at DSE. And they criticized and ridiculed Andre Bete's decision to study caste. Why? They said that caste belongs to India's past. Caste belongs to India's past. It has no place in a modern India, which, we are trying to create collectively after independence. So the Nehruvian vision was very crystal clear that big dams and modern industry will be the temples of modern India. So, an outdated social arrangement like caste will not have any place in India of the 20th and 21st century. Theek? So they were like, why are you literally wasting your time studying an institution which is dead, or at the very least, very fast dying out? Tomorrow's India will be characterized by class, not caste. In other words, how much money you have in your pocket will determine your social status, not your birth-based caste identity. Theek? So his economist friends were saying that caste is dead, or at the very least a dying social phenomena. But there was one man, almost a soul warrior, who in public discourse, in his writings, any sort of public speech he gave, continued to emphasize upon the importance of caste in post-independence modern Indian society. That lone warrior would not tire emphasizing how caste retains its strength, remains important in mid-20th century India of 1950s and 60s. That caste has a lot of endurance. It is here to stay. And that lone voice was that of, no, not Guha. Guha, I don't know, like, he should not be that old only to have a voice back then. He must have been born around that time, yeah, 50s or 60s, I suspect. It was that of, अरे बेटे तो बता रहा है, किसके बारे में बता रहे हैं? Shri M.N. Srinivas. So M.N. Srinivas continued to emphasize upon the continued importance of caste in post-independence India, while his economist friends emphasized how caste is on its way out. And he says in that speech, I wonder who was right. Were my economist friends right when they talked about the increasing irrelevance of caste? Or was Srinivas right, who talked about the continued relevance of caste? So bataiye, who was right? Srinivas, economist, or Srinivas? Economist or Srinivas? You are saying Srinivas because I am quite clear you have a bias in your mind. We are in a sociology class. And sociology is all about, these sociologists and outdated institutions like caste. Forget कि हम sociology class में बैठे हैं. I said sociology caste में बैठे. Forget कि हम sociology की class में बैठे हैं. एक independent assessment मुझे दीजिए. Were the economists right? Or was Srinivas right? Andre Bete says, looking back, I'd say the economists were right. Economists were right. Caste indeed had lost its relevance and was fast losing its relevance in social life in mid-20th century independent India. Particularly, there are 3 areas of social life where caste seems to have significantly declined in terms of its importance or role. three important areas of social life in which caste has significantly declined. Where? You tell me. Division of labor, very well, which is the same as occupation, which is the same as economy. I mean, isn't that is what is being suggested by, I think, all of you, that occupations are no more caste-based. Okay, point well made. What else? Political rights. Yeah, riots. Rights. Huh? Political rights mein you are suggesting caste has declined. How many of us would agree with that? You can be a lone voice, like M.N. Srinivas was in his own times. Huh? But, okay, what else? Restrictions on commensality and social intercourse. Absolutely, friends. One key area was the ritual role of caste in terms of regulating exchange of food and water. Also in terms of maintaining physical distance. To avoid, why was maintaining physical distance important in the caste system? Why was it done? To avoid ritual pollution, right? In both these things, caste has declined substantially, particularly in urban areas. So he says you look at everyday social life in urban areas, be it in schools and colleges, be it in factories and offices. You will find what? Be it in restaurants and dhabas. What will you find? The rules governing the exchange of food and water are not diluted, they are not followed. People are unmindful. People don't know who is serving them. Now, please appreciate, following these rules of, food and water exchange was very, very important for the caste system. Very, very important for the caste system. But in urban areas, he says, in modern India, if you follow these rules, then you will be mocked. Rather than not following, if you follow these rules or are conscious of these rules, then you will be ridiculed and ostracized. Are you with me? Classroom में टिफिन वगैरह खाते हैं हम स्कूल में. Are we conscious of the caste of the fellow student? Office canteen में, McDonald's में कभी order करते हो तो पूछते हो भाई साहब कौन जात हो? If you do that, this is the reaction you will get. You will be laughed at. Yes or no? So these rules governing food and water exchange, which was so central to the caste system in its heydays, they are not observed. Yes or no? Across castes, people are commingling in terms of food and water exchange. I really have no clue, and I've never cared as a city dweller what is the caste of the guy bringing me food in a hotel or restaurant, or in my classroom, or in my office. Yes or no? So as far as food and water exchange rules go, caste gayi til lene. Ironically. Same with maintaining physical distance. Again, it was very important in the caste system. to maintain physical distance or to avoid the physical touch of those who were considered as ritually impure or untouchable. Bete says it is not possible, it is not practically feasible to follow these rules of distance maintenance in urban areas. Are you with me? For example, in public transport. Yes or no? If you are going by bus in an urban area, are you bothered about the caste of the person standing next to you? You don't know and you can't be bothered about it. मेट्रो से आते जाते होंगे, कभी बोला है या सोचा है मन में कि भाई साहब दूर खड़े होइए? You are literally rubbing bodies together. Yes or no? Almost. I mean, you are very, very closely standing and touching each other. There's a lot of yes or no. So these rules of distance maintenance are not being observed in urban areas. In fact, people don't even have it in their minds, in their consciousness, that, you know, when it comes to food or water exchange or this or that, कि हम किसके साथ खा रहे हैं, कौन हमें सर्व कर रहा है, किसके साथ घूम रहे हैं, या body touch हो रही है. And these were very important to the caste system. So clearly one area where caste has significantly and clearly declined. ठीक? Another area where caste has declined in importance is in terms of its linkage with occupation. The caste occupation linkage has substantially weakened. Why and how that has happened? Please appreciate, because of industrialization, because of urbanization, we see that a lot of avenues for individual mobility have emerged. People can rise up or pursue an occupation which they find attractive and lucrative. Yes or no? Irrespective of caste. Many caste-free occupations have emerged. In traditional rural society, in traditional India, there were how many? Like 20, 25 castes at best, or 20, 25 occupational categories. But in modern India, we have hundreds and thousands of occupations, many of which are caste-free. Are you with me? Software developer की क्या caste होती है भैया? You guys are trying to become an IAS officer or an IPS officer. You belong to which caste? Various castes, across castes, because that opportunity is available to people across the board. Yes or no? So, numerous caste-free occupations have emerged. Avenues for individual mobility are now there, which people are trying to avail. So thanks to modernization, thanks to urbanization, in urban areas, people don't know the other person's caste. Are you with me? So when you go for a job interview, what counts? Caste? No. Your resume counts. Matlab your educational qualifications, your work experience, the skills you possess, the certifications you may have acquired. Yes or no? So point is that the caste occupation linkage has been substantially weakened. Clear? Thirdly, which is the third area where the role of caste has declined. एंडोगैमी, मैरिज में क्या फैमिली में तो वी आर ऑल सेम कास्ट. मेरे फैमिली में कौन है? बनी है. हाँ, explain what you are trying to say. I'm talking in terms of caste. In which areas has the role of caste declined? Sorry? Segmented division, education, क्या? Huh? Civil and religious disabilities. In regulating marriage. The role of caste in marriage has also declined. She's saying ये कैसे हो सकता है? बताते हैं. He's saying, चलिए, before we come to marriage, let me address his doubt. He's saying occupation में भी तो caste based reservation है. Number one, caste based reservation is at present confined to public sector jobs. Okay, and you have a huge and growing economy in the private sector where you don't have it. Secondly, even when you look at the reservation policy in the public sector, what is it doing? It is giving opportunities to people of the historically disadvantaged or marginalized castes, which were not having access to those occupations earlier, to now partake or become a part of that occupational category. Okay, so that is the intent. So it is also opening up that occupation. Okay, say civil servants, है ना, to people of various castes. Okay, caste and marriage. How is the role of caste in marriage has declined? Or has it? Brother. No. Sorry, that's not. What about it? Anulom and Pratilom, or let us say intercaste marriages are increasing. Absolutely. Runaway marriages are increasing. Huh? Or love marriages, they are the same. Basically, if you love, you have to run away. Bitya? Bihari government is paying money to intercaste couples. MP में भी है, कई जगह है. पेरेंट्स भी कहने लगेंगे एक टाइम के बाद, भैया इंटरकास्ट कर लो, है ना, 50,000 रुपया मिलने वाला है. हाँ, genome sequencing project is also saying that intercaste marriages should be encouraged because it is, scientifically diversifies the gene pool, so lesser whatever anomalies, and yeah, otherwise it's within caste marriage is more like inbreeding of a sort. Huh? Okay, let's not get into the merits and demerits of it. Okay, but to what extent is it taking place, or how is the role of caste in the sphere of marriage declining? Vidya? People are more exploring in terms of their romantic and sexual behaviors. And you are saying that, in that experimentation, we cross caste boundaries. Very well. Vidya? She's saying more than caste matters at the time of marriage. Okay, so people want to marry in a similar or better financial background wala spouse. Very well. Bete in fact makes quite a similar point. Couple of things he says. One is that we see there are increasing instances of intercaste marriages. Increasing instances. And he says that these marriages are truly intercaste, in the sense, earlier, intercaste marriages were classified into two types, namely Anulom and Pratilom. Anulom was, I'm not asking the definition, but what was the social attitude towards it? Anulom was accepted, while Pratilom was strictly prohibited and punished. Theek? But he says, now when I talk to my students in Delhi University, or I talk to my Bengali students in Bengali, and he says uses some Bengali phrase. He was giving this lecture in Bengal. Okay? Ki tobe, pratilom, tobe, anulom or something. He says they simply don't understand this terminology. Today's generation, which is like 1950s and 60s, okay, today's generation does not know the difference between anulom and pratilom. In other words, for them, it is simply an intercaste marriage. So that very important distinction which existed between anulom and pratilom is now fading away. Are you with me? हमें ये पता है हम अपने यूथों को कि हम अपने कास्ट में नहीं शादी कर रहे. ये नहीं है कि वो हमसे ऊंची जात है या नीची जात है. That sense is missing. ठीक? Simply you can write, the youth are unaware of the distinctions between, the important distinction between anulom and pratilom. Another thing, friends, at the time of marriage, criteria other than caste is becoming very important, equally important, one would say. Criteria other than caste is becoming very important at the time of marriage. What criteria? You tell me. If you are looking for a groom, okay, if you have a woman of marriageable age in your family, or for the female students in your own case, and you are seeking a groom, what criteria are important? लड़का जब देखने जाते हैं, क्या देखते हैं? Sorry? Age is like a given. Huh? What criteria? Income. Income criteria, लड़का कमाता कितना है भाई? Very, very important. Very, very elementary. As elementary as one wants कि लड़का कौन जात है? Yes or no? Income criteria. Education. Why education important at the time of marriage? Because education is strongly linked to income, right? Property ownership. All these criteria become important. And if you are a boy, which you are, and you seek a bride, what criteria is important at the marriage, at the time of marriage? Boys will answer. क्या गुण चाहिए लड़की में? सुंदर. Very important. Very, very important. है ना? So she should be beautiful, or dutiful नहीं, beautiful. हाँ. और he is saying घर का खाना और काम जानती हो. लड़कियों, anybody interested? We found an 18वीं सदी का लड़का. नहीं. हाँ, और क्या क्राइटेरिया है लड़की चुनते हुए? फैमिली बैकग्राउंड इन टर्म्स ऑफ कौन जात है? हाँ, डाउरी, वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट. डाउरी, एब्सोल्युटली, वेरी वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट कंसिडरेशन, राइट? और लड़कों बोल दो जो सोच रहे हो पर बोल नहीं रहे हो. हाँ, लड़कियों तक की एजुकेशन इंपॉर्टेंट हो गई है. और लड़के से कम होनी चाहिए बट अनपढ़ भी नहीं लाएंगे, ठीक है ना। एक बैचलर्स होनी चाहिए, मान के चलो, ठीक है, बट ये ना हो पीएचडी कर रखी हो, वो भी नहीं संभाली जाएगी, राइट। सो अपार्ट फ्रॉम ब्यूटी, डाउरी, एजुकेशन एंड कैरेक्टर, yes or no? मतलब शी शुड नॉट हैव अ सेक्सुअल पास्ट, ठीक है। दैट इज हाउ वी डिफाइन अ वुमन्स कैरेक्टर इन आवर सोसाइटी, ठीक। पॉइंट इज फ्रेंड्स की अपार्ट फ्रॉम कास्ट, अदर क्राइटेरिया आर ऑल्सो बिकमिंग वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट एट द टाइम ऑफ मैरिज, ठीक। अनदर थिंग फ्रेंड्स, यू नो, punishment has changed for intercaste marriages. Earlier, who would give the punishment in case of intercaste marriages? The community, the whole community. तो जात बिरादरी से बेदखल कर देना, किसको? लड़का लड़की को, वो तो भग गए। उनके माता पिता को, कि तुमने अपने बच्चों पे इतना कंट्रोल ना रखा, लड़का लड़की हाथ से निकल गए, राइट। तो इट इन्वॉल्व एक्सट्रीम मेजर्स लाइक सोशल बॉयकॉट, एक्सकम्युनिकेशन वगैरह वगैरह। बट नाउ, या लड़का लड़की को भी ऐसे कर देते थे कि अब मत आना, मर गई हो तुम हमारे लिए, काइंड ऑफ थिंग, ठीक। बट नाउ हु डज इट? हाँ, एट बेस्ट द फैमिली, और ज्यादा कहो तो एक्सटेंडेड फैमिली, चाचा मामा बात करना बंद कर देंगे जो राखी पे आते थे, ठीक। इमीडिएट या एक्सटेंडेड फैमिली कर रही है। इन अदर वर्ड्स, व्हाट डज दिस इंडिकेट? अर्लियर द होल कम्युनिटी वाज हर्ट or aggrieved by intercaste marriages. Now the wider community is not bothering, only the immediate family. Are you with me? In case of intercaste marriages, but you know, earlier the community was very, should I say, preoccupied with a strong concern to prevent intercaste marriages. Now the community has better things to worry about. Are you with me? So parents are at the most, boycotting that too. फिर क्या होता है? Do you guys know any intercaste couples? क्या हुआ फिर? कुछ दिनों बाद एक्सेप्ट कर लिया, पर्टिकुलरली कब? बच्चे के बाद। एब्सोल्युटली, बच्चे के बाद पिघल जाते हैं दादा दादी नाना नानी थोड़े, ठीक है ना, वो भी टेम्पररी सा रहता है। तो पॉइंट इज दैट द इंटेंसिटी ऑफ पनिशमेंट, द unit giving the punishment, that has changed, which clearly indicates that the role of caste at the time of marriage is reducing, ठीक। तो clearly economists like Amartya Sen, K.N. Raj, V.M. Dandekar were quite right when they talked about the increasing irrelevance of caste in independent India. Clear? But does that mean that the doyen of Indian sociology, doyen matlab the dawn of Indian sociology, M.N. Srinivas, was wrong? नहीं, बेटे कहते हैं Srinivas was also right. Srinivas was also right. In other words, economists were right. Caste was losing importance or had lost importance in three very crucial areas. Occupation was very crucial to caste. Caste names are occupational categories. But now modern caste-free occupations are there. Caste is not governing food and water exchange. And endogamy, which has sustained caste, in that also the caste seems to be taking a reduced kind of a role. But Srinivas was also right. In certain other areas, the role and importance of caste in social life seems to be on the rise. Retained knee on the rise. Yani caste is becoming all the more important. कहां? हाँ? Politics. अरे absolutely. Electoral politics. Is caste important in the sphere of politics? For theory, that is my job to teach you. You tell me. What is your sense? Not padhi padhai, aankhon dekhi. What role does caste play in politics? Don't we vote for Vikas? Huh? We हटा दो, we vote for caste. कहते हैं इंडिया में, you don't cast your vote, you vote your caste. क्या रोल बताओ ना, प्रैक्टिकली कुछ इनसाइट्स दो. क्या देखा है ब्रदर? Caste unites majority of population. Acha, so for example, he's saying in UP, the Yadavs rally behind the Samajwadi Party, for example. Brother, Jats in Western UP vote for Rashtriya Lok Dal, अजीत सिंह पार्टी, है ना? चौधरी चरण सिंह पार्टी और उनके बेटे. हाँ, again another example from BSP, from UP, that the Dalits vote for the BSP. What if I tell you that this caste-ridden politics is a UP thing, not an India thing? That is what it seems to be, based on these examples. Huh? Is it a UP thing? Guys, no crosstalk. Brother? In Karnataka, it was all about Vokkalega and Lingayats. Bilkul. So caste, we will discuss at great length the role of caste in politics when we talk about the political system. Suffice to say that Bete says, caste consciousness otherwise was strongly declining in India. Caste consciousness was strongly declining, like food exchange. Chua-chut. Yes or no? People were not maintaining ritual, physical distance to prevent pollution. So caste consciousness was strongly declining. But a new lease of life has been infused in caste because of electoral politics. Electoral politics has infused a new lease of life. फिर से जीवंत कर दिया है कास्ट कॉन्शियसनेस को. किसने? इलेक्शंस ने. ठीक? So electoral politics has literally resuscitated caste. Caste, you never know, but maybe caste would have died. That's too strong a word, or significantly got dented had it not been perhaps for electoral politics. Come elections, then all political parties factor in caste. And he says more than, equally importantly, apart from electoral politics, is the role of what? I'm giving you hint. Huh? ना, not elections. वही तो हो गया, electoral politics, elections एक ही बात तो है. What? कहीं बिजली से तो कास्ट नहीं आती. media. Very good. TV channels. They do not tire talking about caste. During election times, you open any TV channel and they will be going on and on and on and on about the caste factor, the caste arithmetic. You will see that Yogendra Yadav on your TV screens, psephologist, academicians also, ex-Aam Aadmi Party guy, yes or no, with his gamcha trademark, highlighting what? How caste. तो जातियों का वो ये समीकरण, yes, जातियों का समीकरण ऐसा है. He cannot tire. He मतलब he represents the whole जात of political commentators, analysts, and what do you call this TV anchors. They continuously talk on and on and on about caste. In fact, according to Bete, they overstate the role of caste, overemphasize. Are you with me? But if you open the TV, switch on the TV, you will feel that India and Indian elections are all about caste. So people may not be very caste driven or caste conscious in their lives otherwise, but they become very conscious of caste at the time of elections. Not just because they are voting. Even if you are passive and not voting, what are you doing? You are at least watching TV. And TV खोलते ही जातियों का समीकरण आपके सामने चैनल आफ्टर चैनल बीम हो रहा है. Are you with me? In fact, Bete also wrote, a paper titled India's Destiny Not Cast in Stone. He wrote an article titled India's Destiny Not Cast in Stone. A play with words. Cast in stone वैसे कहते हैं ना कि हाँ कि मतलब पत्थर में जड़ा हुआ गड़ा हुआ नहीं है. हाँ, India's destiny not cast in stone, बिटिया. That's the title of his article. It was very controversial. It came in your favorite newspaper, The Hindu. है ना? What can more appropriately be called the anti-Hindu. But in that paper, Andre Bete wrote in his article that media perhaps overhypes the role of caste. It makes it seem that India is all about caste. That caste, which is this very ancient institution, is very much equally present today and will remain so in the future. And he says this ignores the various and important changes that are taking place. How caste is becoming increasingly irrelevant in commensality, and so on and so forth, what we've already discussed. But then the media narrative seems to keep it alive. ठीक? तो ये है. So who was right according to Bete? Both economists as well as Srinivas were right in their own way. Economists were right because caste was losing importance in important areas like commensality or food exchange, like maintaining distance to avoid ritual pollution, like determining one's occupation, and at the time of marriage. Srinivas was also right because at the time of elections, caste does seem to become important. Particularly if you go by media narrative, caste seems to be all over the place. ठीक. He wrote a book, Bete, Staying with Bete on Caste. Bete also wrote a book titled Caste, Class, and Power. Caste, Class, and Power. Vaishna is asking, can we quote this article in our answers? Absolutely. Absolutely, we can. So he conducted a village study. He went and lived in a village. That village was Sripuram village in Tamil Nadu. All right. It is in Thanjavur district or Tanjore district, whatever you are comfortable with, in Tamil Nadu. What he basically says, we will discuss this study at some greater length later on when we discuss village studies. But on the issue of caste, I want to highlight something. What he says is his basic argument, not just for this village, but for India as a whole. In pre-modern India, these three aspects, caste, class, and power, were broadly overlapping. Caste, class, and power were broadly overlapping. Meaning what? The upper caste were also the wealthiest and the most powerful in the village. ठीक? While the lowest castes, which were the untouchable castes, they were not only ritually lowest, but they were also amongst the poorest. So they did not have land or any sort of material wealth. They were also landless. They were also lowest in terms of class and power terms. समझ रहे हैं आप? In other words, in pre-modern India, upper caste was also upper class, which was also high ranking in terms of power. Middle caste also had medium wealth and also were medium in terms of the amount of power they enjoyed. And the lower caste were also lower class, which was also low, or they were also powerless. ठीक? So there was a very high degree of overlap between caste, class, and power. So one's caste told us everything about him. In pre-modern India, a person's caste also determined other aspects. Are you with me? All right. But in modern India, things are changing and changing fast. Because of various factors, this linkage between caste, class, and power no more holds in modern India. So if you are upper caste, does not mean you are also rich anymore. if you are medium or intermediate caste, does not mean you will also have medium amount of power and wealth. Are you with me? Your caste is no more a determinant of the amount of wealth and power you possess. So one's caste does not anymore tell us everything about a person or a family. Yes or no? Simply put, friends, do you know of people who are not well off in money terms who belong to upper caste? गरीब ब्राह्मणों को जानते हो? बिल्कुल जानते हो. Do you also know people, say, from the scheduled castes who have a very comfortable amount of money or who are in positions of high power? Yes. You have civil servants, politicians, yes or no? Even industrialists who come from scheduled castes. Are you with me? So, ये क्या था? One sec. So now upper caste can be upper class, middle class या lower class, can have high power, medium power या low power, and so on and so forth. Yes or no? बना मत देना ऐसा एग्जाम में, वाहियात लगेगा, but this is how it is. Okay? Any diagrams, etc. that you make should be very, very neat and clean, legible, right? And not like, but this is how social life is. ठीक? In other words, friends, earlier in India, pre-modern India, there was a system of cumulative inequality. In pre-modern India, there was a system of cumulative inequality, meaning if you were disadvantaged in terms of caste, you were also disadvantaged. That disadvantage would kind of compound. You were also, or accumulate. That disadvantage, you would also be disadvantaged in terms of wealth and power. But this cumulative inequality in modern India has been replaced by dispersed inequality. Are you with me? पहले आप रिचुअली लो रैंकिंग थे तो आप गरीब भी थे और पावरलेस भी थे. अब जरूरी नहीं है कि ऐसा हो. ठीक? In other words, friends, you know, this whole idea of Andre Bete highlights how the caste system is undergoing a lot of change. It is not static or set in stone. Are you with me? In rural social life, one's caste is not anymore all important. Your social position in the village is determined by both caste and class. दोनों मैटर करता है. Within a caste, can you have people belonging to different classes? In a given village, can you have some rich Brahmins and some poor Brahmins and middle income Brahmins? And you not only you can, you do. So there is class stratification within a caste. Are you with me? So a lot of permutations and combinations, lot of dynamism and changes, which we can witness in social life today. ठीक? So a lot of variability is there. Earlier it was very standardized or template. If you are upper caste, you're also rich and powerful. If you are low caste, you are also poor and powerless. But now you can be upper caste or low caste and still be powerful. And so on and so forth. ठीक? Why have these changes occurred? Why has caste changed from, or why has the social structure changed from one of cumulative inequality to dispersed inequality? कैसे आया ये बदलाव? आप बताइए ना. Because of modern occupations, because of constitutional and legal provisions. For example, the prohibition on untouchability. For example, the concept of equality across castes in the constitution. The concept of one man, one vote. So those castes who had numerically more, which were typically lower, they gained political importance because of political mobilization by movements like the BSP. Yes or no? So various things की वजह से, urbanization की वजह से बहुत लोग अपने गांव में जमीन छोड़ के बेच के चले गए. So land ownership changed hands. Are you with me? Numerous factors. Modern education की वजह से लोगों के दिमाग और मानसिकता बदली है. कास्ट ऑक्यूपेशन लिंकेज ब्रेक हो रहा है उसकी वजह से. ठीक है? So all these factors combinedly, political empowerment, constitutional and legal provisions, modern education, urbanization, all of them have resulted in breaking the nexus between caste, class and power which earlier existed in traditional Indian society. ठीक? Another thing that Bete talks about is he takes on Louis Dumont. Dumont, friends, he classified societies into two types, namely Homo hierarchicus, which he called Indian society, and Homo equalis, which he used for Western society. According to Dumont, Indian society was based on the principle of hierarchy, therefore Homo hierarchicus, while Western society was based on the principle of equality, therefore Homo equalis. Andre Bete questions and criticizes such classification of societies into two contrasting types. ठीक है? Bete says that, a more appropriate way of classifying societies is in terms of harmonic and disharmonic. A more appropriate classification should be in terms of harmonic and disharmonic social systems. See, Dumont's classification gives us the misconception that as if Western society is characterized by equality and Indian society uniquely is characterized by hierarchy. But this is really not the case. Do we have hierarchy in the West? You bet you do. You have extreme inequalities based on wealth, race, even gender, sexuality in the West. ठीक है? तो टू वेस्ट को आप बोलो कि वो होमो इक्वालिस हैं और इंडिया होमो हायरार्किकस है, ये अच्छी बात नहीं है. हार्मोनिक डिसहार्मोनिक क्या होता है? With the classification which Bete offers, harmonic means when the values that govern the society, the principles upon which it is based, and what you see in actual social life, they are in sync. that society is harmonic. They are in harmony. How people think and how they behave or act it out in social life. That is a harmonic social system. जिनकी कथनी और करनी, कथनी या सोच और करनी में मेल हो, they are harmonic. ठीक? But if there is disharmony or disjunction between the values or principles that are the basis upon which the society claims to be based and what you see in actual social life, that is disharmonic. ठीक? इंडियन सोसाइटी, प्रिंसिपल क्या है इंडियन सोसाइटी का? अंडरलाइंग प्रिंसिपल क्या है? हायरार्की. एंड व्हाट डू यू सी इन सोशल लाइफ? हायरार्की. तो इंडिया इज विच टाइप ऑफ सोशल सिस्टम? हार्मोनियस. या नॉट हार्मोनियस, हार्मोनिक. ठीक है, हार्मोनिक. और वेस्ट में the principle is equality, but what do you see in social life? Inequality or hierarchy. So it is disharmonic. ठीक? Let us together and quickly read through the handout on harmonic and disharmonic social systems that has been shared with you. It was shared in the last lecture, I suppose. Andre Bete, in his book Harmonic and Disharmonic Social Systems, is critical of the writings of scholars like Dumont. Dumont tries to represent the opposition between equality and inequality as a contrast between two types of societies, which Bete considers is misleading. For Dumont, Indian society is homo hierarchicus, and it is fundamentally opposed to Western society, which is homo equalis. Bete considers it may be more appropriate to classify societies as harmonic and disharmonic. A harmonic social system is one in which there is consistency between the normative order, मतलब जो norms prescribe करते हैं, and the existential order, meaning what actually exists. All right? For example, in India, there is both the premise of inequality. So the underlying assumption or principle is that of inequality and the practice of inequality. We believe in inequality and we also see it in our social life. So there is fundamental, make a correction, there is no fundamental contradiction. एक छोटे से no से पूरा meaning change हो जाता है. So there is no fundamental, add the word no, fundamental contradiction between the normative and the existential order. A disharmonic social system is one in which there is lack of consistency between the existential order, मतलब what actually exists in society, and the normative order, what the social norms prescribe. For example, modern Western industrial societies are egalitarian in aspiration, but hierarchical in social organization. There is a clear clash between ideology and practice. Men attach themselves to the principle of equality, and they encounter in their lives the presence of inequality. Because of the clash between ideology and practice, disharmonic systems are essentially unstable. ठीक है? एक बात बताओ, do you see any change in normative terms in Indian society? In other words, in simpler bhasha, do you see any change in our thinking or underlying value premise that governs Indian society? क्या हो रहा है? हम भी अब इक्वालिटी के premise को internalize करते जा रहे हैं, thanks to constitution, modern education and blah blah. Yes or no? So many of you, I presume, safely presume, believe in the rightness of equality as a principle, that all people are equal. Constitution भी यही कहता है, human rights discourse भी यही कहता है, progressive भी यही लगता है. So we all now believe in equality as the governing principle. But in social life we encounter what? Grave inequalities. तो हम भी क्या होते जा रहे हैं? हार्मोनिक से डिसहार्मोनिक होते जा रहे हैं. So that is how social change in India is or can be understood as a story of a shift away from a harmonic social system to a disharmonic one. Are you with me? For Andre Bete's views, apart from harmonic, disharmonic, I'll also share some sort of a write-up. ठीक है? So that is about Andre Bete's views on caste. ठीक है? You've studied 4 scholars. कौन सबसे सही लगा? Whose analysis of caste seems to be the most apt, most appropriate? Andre Bete? Perhaps that is, recency bias. Last वही पढ़ा है, अभी ताजा एकदम दिमाग में. Is it that? Balanced approach provide की है. हमने इसके criticisms भी नहीं पढ़े ना, तो और भी सही लगता है. हाँ. Srinivas is good. Why? Why do you prefer Srinivas to the other? All right. Brother? You're also vouching for M.N. Srinivas. Brother? So those first 2 people, they appear very, very narrow in their analysis. Andre Bete is something like a Weber for India. Weber also, in paper 1 we study, he talks about caste, class, and no, he talks about class, status, and party. Okay? So a Trinitarian model. And he also talks about permutations and combinations, something which also Bete talks about. And these kind of people, the middle ground walas, they always seem more reasonable overall. Huh? बिल्कुल. Brother? चलो एक इनका क्रिटिसिज्म चुन्नू सा बता देता हूं. जब इन्होंने ये लिखा ना, इंडियाज डेस्टिनी नॉट कास्ट इन स्टोन, और जनता में फेंक दिया द हिंदू से, ठीक है, तो बहुत गुस्सा आया. मुझे नहीं, जनता को भी नहीं, कुछ academicians and activists को. One very prominent amongst them is, any idea? Anybody? No? Gail Omvith. She has made India her home. Okay? And is a Dalit and feminist activist. So she says, in response to Andre Bete's write-up, India's Destiny Not Cast in Stone, she writes a kind of rebuttal titled something like, Andre Bete's Dream World. Andre Bete's Dream World. That Bete is imagining an India where caste has ceased to matter. Because Bete in that article says, media is overhyping caste, is exaggerating the importance of caste. But in so many things, We don't see caste in everyday life. And she is very, very critical. She says that, Bete's article lacks both theory and any empirical basis. दोनों की कमी है. So Bete is simply turning a blind eye to the reality of caste, which according to activists like Umvit, continues to define social life in India. Okay? We will discuss more on this aspect, whether and how caste is important today, apart from the narrow domain of media discourse and politics that Bete talks about, in a later lecture. Okay? Mohan is making a very, very apt comment. If we see the basic ideas of all these scholars, we can get the actual picture of caste. So perhaps a mix. थोड़ा इधर से चुराओ, थोड़ा उधर से चुराओ. ठीक है ना? Can give you a truer understanding of caste. चलिए. With that, we take a break. Rahul is saying, truly the wisest Indian. Mugdha, regarding your question, I would say it's not only skills. Mugdha, I'm responding to your question. I would say the way you are framing it, it seems as if occupation or class is all important or is the sole important criteria to determine one's social position, which is clearly not the case. Because I would say it is a combination of both one's caste as well as class, which has some bearing on one's social position in India today. Okay? So caste has not been erased or become completely overshadowed by your class identity or the money in your pocket. Okay? And how caste continues to affect our social life, we'll discuss. Please settle down, friends. I'm responding to a student's question. It is not of concern to the rest of the students. Vaishna, addressing your doubt, the topics that we've covered as yet in paper 2 include an introduction, a broad introduction to Indian society, specifically highlighting the unity in diversity in India. Then we began with discussing the caste system. We discussed the basic features of the caste system. We discussed what is Jajmani and the relationship between caste and Varn. Then we discussed mobility in the caste system. Friends, do give inputs if I miss out on anything. Then we discussed mobility in the caste system. And then we talked about various theories of caste, starting with Ghure, then Louis Dumont, then Srinivas, and now Andre Bete. That is the sequence of topics which have been completed. Chaliye. Now, talking about, moving on, we've discussed theories of caste. Now discussing what is arguably the most despised, the most hated aspect of the caste system, which is what? Endogamy. Huh? Untouchability. Bilkul. Broadly, friends, what do you understand by this term untouchability and how important it is for us to understand this? What is untouchability at the most, in its most basic or elementary form? What is the Hindi word for untouchability? Untouchable, the untouchability. Chua-chut. Huh? Chua-chut. Okay. And what is untouchability or chua-chut? Yeah? Who we? He's saying we, the upper castes, are not allowed to touch the, not the lower castes, the untouchable castes. While writing, make sure you don't write in terms of we and them. Okay? Secondly, it's not just the upper castes, but what we should call the touchable castes. Okay? So untouchability means, what is the difference? Is that the question in your mind? No, that's taken care of. So untouchability at its most elementary means that the touchable castes have to avoid the physical touch of the untouchable castes because it can lead to ritual pollution, because it is considered as a source of ritual pollution. Okay? Now this practice of untouchability that we are talking about, that you avoid the physical touch of certain human beings because they are considered a source of ritual pollution. ठीक? Is it like, what is the magnitude or, scale of the problem? How many people does it affect, this practice of untouchability? India mein, as per the last census, there are more than 1,200 scheduled castes. So there are different, more than 1,200 castes which are considered as untouchable. And they together constitute, friends, more than 16% of India's population. Or specifically 16.6% of India's population is scheduled caste. So 16.6% of our population, say 1 21 करोड़ लगा लो 2011 का या अभी का 140 करोड़, कितना हुआ? 16%. It is almost what, 1/6, which is how much? More than 20 crore. So it is not a, should I say, in terms of scale or the people it affects, not a sidey problem. It affects a huge chunk of the population. Every sixth Indian, am I right if I say 16% is 1/6? सही है ना? देख लेना वो जो भी है, every sixth or seventh Indian is afflicted by the scourge or problem of untouchability. ठीक है? Or more than 20 crore Indians are affected by the problem of untouchability. Guys, apart from the number of people affected, but why is it such a big issue? In the sense, I would say, avoiding physical touch is a characteristic feature of many social relationships. Do you guys touch me? Do students touch physically teachers or avoid touch? To avoid, there is a certain physical distance which is maintained in the teacher-student relationship. Are you with me? Would you touch, say, people of the opposite gender without a worry? No, there is a certain physical distance which is maintained between people of different genders also. Yes or no? So you don't get touchy-feely, if I may dare say, with anyone and everyone. We avoid physical touch in many, even in our homes. If you have, say, a certain relationship like Devar Bhabhi, do you touch? No. You maintain a certain physical distance. So, why is it not touching such a major issue? And after all, you guys are 20 crore plus. Do all the touching within, if you so please. Why is untouchability such a major social issue? I fail to understand. Brothers and sisters, बताइए. बिटिया. There's no sense of inferiority and superiority in the other social relationships which we have just illustrated. Very well. Brother? There is a certain attribute of dignity or mutual respect in the other relationships like teacher, student, or Devar, Bhabhi, and so on and so forth, which are characterized by, which is not the case you are arguing when it comes to inter-caste relationships between the touchable and the untouchable caste. Brother, it was inhuman. Because untouchables were considered as even worse than animals. You could touch animals, but not fellow human beings. और बताइए. Friends, please appreciate. Apart from the literal meaning of the term, untouchability, which seems to suggest that you avoid physical touch. But the practice of untouchability in Indian history was never confined only to this aspect. It was a far more holistic, all-round discrimination and disprivilege which was imposed on the untouchables based on the accident of birth. For example, there was geographical segregation. Their houses had to be outside of the village community. There was ritual disadvantage which was imposed. In the sense, you could not conduct rituals. You could not enter temples. Why is it important? Big deal. How many of you go to temples regularly? Many of us don't. Out of choice, we don't go. So, क्या problem है? Why should not going to a temple be problematic? बताओ ना, मंदिर ना जाने से क्या हो जाएगा? मैं क्या अमीर गरीब हो जाऊंगा? It was absolutely back then a matter of importance, because spiritual gratification is important in a pre-modern society, right? Not going out of choice is quite another matter. If you and I, modern men and women, don't enter temples, you know, but it amounted to being deprived of spiritual solace. You could not draw water from the village well. So many, you did not have access to education. Are you with me? So there was geographical segregation, social exclusion from schools and community life, political disenfranchisement, economic exploitation, a very, very holistic system of disprivileges and disadvantages which were imposed on a community, on various communities that were deemed to be untouchable. ठीक है? सिर्फ छुआछूत की बात नहीं थी. The term may seem to suggest that untouchability. ठीक? Now, what we, this word untouchables, when we talk about these 1200 plus communities, various other terms and epithets are used for whom we refer to as the untouchables. The other terms are, for example, they are referred to as avarn. Untouchables are also referred to as avarn. Avarn meaning those without a varn, or those who were outside of the varn vyavastha. And I reiterate, I again clarify, you had the Brahmins, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra, and below the Shudra, outside of the Varna Vyavastha, you had the untouchables or the Avarna. So Shudras are not untouchables. Untouchables are below the Shudras and outside of the Varna Vyavastha. ठीक? They have also been historically referred to as achut. The word achut in Hindi literally means those who are not to be touched. Chuna matlab to touch. Achut matlab those who are not to be touched. Another term which was in use was asparsh. Sparsh again refers to touch. Asparsh matlab those whose touch has to be avoided. Another term was pancham. Pancham literally meaning the fifth category. The other four categories being Brahmin, Kshatriya, Vaishya and Shudra. So pancham or the fifth category. Another term was ati Shudra. Ati Shudra, meaning those worse off than the Shudras, okay, or those below the Shudras. Another term was Adi Dravida. Adi means what? हाँ, very good. First, है ना? आदि कवि. कौन है आदि कवि? कालिदास. कालिदास कब के थे? अभी थे, मतलब हाँ, ऑन अ रिलेटिव स्केल अभी थे, है ना? आदि काव्य कौन सा है? आदि कवि ने लिखा है. द फर्स्ट पोएम, सो टू स्पीक, और द फर्स्ट लिटरेरी वर्क, ऋग्वेद, रामायण. रामायण इज कंसिडर्ड एज आदि काव्य. तो आदि कवि कौन है? वाल्मीकि, मेरे भी फंडे हिला दोगे. हाँ, खैर, point is not that. Point is these are referred to as Adi Dravid. Adi Dravid matlab, according to one theory, Aryans came from the outside. Before them, there were the Dravidian population. Adi Dravidas were those who were there before the Dravidians. Okay? So they were the, original people, so to speak, who were there even before the Dravidians. So Aryans came, they pushed the Dravidians down in the hierarchy, and the Dravidians pushed the Adi Dravid below in the hierarchy. Okay? They are also referred to as, what was the term that was popularized by Bapu? Harijan. This term was coined by, not coined by Gandhi, popularized by Gandhi. It was coined by a Gujarati saint, medieval era, Narsingh Mehta. Okay? Or Gandhi ji used this and made it popular in the 20th century for the untouchables. The word literally means Hari ke Jan, or the children of Hari or Lord Vishnu, children of God. ठीक? In official parlance, the official term for the untouchables during the colonial period was, depressed क्यों हो रहे हो, पूरा तो बोलो. Depressed classes, not caste, depressed classes. Colonial era official nomenclature. And what is the term presently officially in use? Scheduled castes. Scheduled castes. Depressed classes or scheduled castes. What is the term used as a term of political assertion by the members of the community? Dalit. The term Dalit. What it means, we will discuss at length. And what are its implications? We'll discuss at length as we proceed. These are some of the terms. So when you are using any of these terms, you are talking about the same category of persons, what we today officially call as scheduled castes, or conventionally referred to as untouchables. ठीक? Now, a very detailed and scathing criticism of this practice has been developed by B.R. Ambedkar. ठीक है? He has highlighted how this practice was very, very, what should I say? It was the most inhuman practice in human history. He says it was worse than slavery in America. He compares it to other very extreme, seemingly extreme systems of discrimination and exploitation. And he says untouchability is worse than the system of slavery in USA, or this, anti-Semitic sentiment in Europe. There was anti-Semitism, which culminated in the Holocaust of the Jews in Nazi Germany. Untouchability was worse than that as well. So by far, it is the most inhuman social practice in human history. अंबेडकर कहते हैं that untouchables are of three types. Three types. ठीक है? One is the untouchables, whose physical touch has to be avoided. Another category is the unapproachables. Not only their physical touch has to be avoided, but a safe distance has to be kept from them. Why? Because even if their shadow falls on a touchable caste person, it can be a source of ritual pollution. So you have to maintain a distance which is safe enough that their shadow, polluting shadow, does not fall on you. Are you with me? So you don't have to approach them even. ये हो गए the unapproachables. For example, the Nayadis. It is given in the handout, the Nayadi community of Kerala. ठीक? A third category, even more ghatak, shall I say, are the unseeables. Unseeables. Their mere sight can pollute. दिखने भी नहीं चाहिए. Their mere sight is a source of ritual pollution for a touchable caste Hindu. So he says, he gives the example of the Purada Vana of Tamil Nadu. They are a community of unseeables. Yes? They used to wear ghungrus so as to announce, so to speak, that we are around. Huh? Ambedkar writes very graphically. He says, this community, the unseeables, they were not allowed to come out during the day, lest the other villagers see them. So they had to follow a nocturnal routine. Like other regular people follow a daily routine, you and I, हमारी दिनचर्या होती है, उनकी रातचर्या होती थी. They were forced to come out after the sunset, like hyenas, Ambedkar writes, and go back into their dens before the break of, the first dawn. समझ रहे हैं आप? Because their mere sight was a source of pollution. Untouchability, friends, as Ambedkar has highlighted very, very in graphic detail in his writings, it amounted to a very large number of disabilities and prohibitions that were imposed by the touchable caste Hindus on the untouchable castes. What were these? What should I say? Prohibitions that were put on the untouchables? A whole litany. For example, they were prohibited from entering the temple. Not just the temple, they were also prohibited from using the road leading to the temple. They were what? Prohibited from drawing water from the village well, because the water will get polluted. They were prohibited from getting any education. They were prohibited from living within the village. So their residences had to be outside of the village. They were prohibited from sitting on a chair in the presence of a touchable without permission. They were prohibited from, for example, men of the untouchable communities were prohibited from sporting a mustache. क्यों? मूछ क्यों नहीं रख सकते? हाँ, mustache or mooch is a signifier of high social status. Are you with me? So they were prohibited from sporting a mustache. Men were also prohibited from riding a horse during marriage, during the marriage procession. ठीक है ना? घोड़ी नहीं चढ़ सकते आप. They were prohibited from wearing ornaments. कोई ज्वेलरी वूलरी नहीं होगी, ठीक है? In some parts of the country, untouchable caste women were even prohibited from covering their breasts, and they had to roam about bare-breasted. Women were also prohibited from riding a palki. ज्यादा अंग्रेजों तो palanquin लिखते हैं इंग्लिश में, but palki works just fine during their marriage procession. ठीक? They were prohibited from building a home with pakka roof. कच्चे घर होने चाहिए और walls. Magic. They were also prohibited from accumulating wealth in any form, such as land or cattle. Prohibited from conducting rituals. Prohibited from wearing clean clothes. Prohibited from giving high sounding names to their children. Their names should be such, writes Ambedkar, that it invites contempt or which indicates their lowly position. If you remember the movie Lagan, do you? Yes, there was this bowler in the village cricket team named Kachra. Yes or no? Such kind of names were considered as appropriate for members of the untouchable communities. They were prohibited from doing anything which will, make them pass off as an untouchable, pass off as a touchable. In other words, your conduct should make it clear that you are an untouchable. They were compelled, बाकी सब में क्रॉस है. अच्छा, जब वो होते थे community festivals where the whole village would participate, Holi, Diwali, Milans and celebrations, would the untouchables also participate? No. They were made to, but they were required to clean up after the festivities were over. Are you with me? If there was a death in the village, then the news of the death had to be carried to relatives in other villages. Are you with me? So who would carry that, what should I say, ominous or negative news? Untouchables. ताकि दरवाजा खोलते ही आप जब untouchable को अपने सामने देखो, पता लग जाए कि he's brought bad news. Are you with me? And they were forced into menial, dirty, defiling occupations, such as manual scavenging, disposing of human and animal corpses, animal carcasses, dealing with excreta, blood, leather or skin. ठीक? तो ये है untouchability. It's not just about not touching. Had it been just that, I'm sure society would have condoned it to a certain extent. ठीक? ये कब की बात हो रही है? Does this thing still exist? Are we talking about a period of history? Or are we talking about today? Some of these things are happening even today. When Ambedkar was writing, this was in the period from 1930s to 50s. Okay? Ambedkar was very clear that these practices do not have the sanction of law. The British-made law does not sanction these practices or prohibitions on the untouchables. But this is the code of life for the untouchables in India's numerous villages. Practically, their life is governed by these kinds of prohibitions and rules and regulations. So, at least till during Ambedkar's lifetime, these practices were very much there. Okay? It has been about what, 7 odd decades since Ambedkar. He passed away in 1956, if I remember correctly, or around that time. ठीक? What is the scene today? Tell me, friends. क्या ये आज की असलियत है या नहीं? What some extent? Share insights from real social life, Bitya, and avoid the anti-Hindu. Avoid news items. Share insights from your own life. She's saying her house help celebrates Choti Diwali while her own family celebrates Badi Diwali. And how is this an expression of untouchability? All right. Brother, dirty works still are being done by, like manual scavenging, still being done by scheduled castes. Brother. So we read in the anti-Hindu that a Dalit man was prohibited from riding a horse during a marriage ceremony. He was taken down, beaten up. We come across such incidents in the newspaper. More aankho dekhi. Brother. He visited his Nani house in summer vacations. Does Nani practice untouchability? The mamas and Nani were sitting in their rooms. An untouchable caste person came and he sat at a distance on the floor And the grandmother brought water in a steel glass. And his mama threw the glass because that untouchable caste person drank water from that this thing. Very well. And this is which part of the country? Is it a village? A village near Bharatpur in Rajasthan. ऐसी बताइए और चीजें अगर आपने देखी हैं. How many? हाँ बिटिया, please raise your hand. That's how we do it. बिटिया. Oh, how disadvantaged. So an untouchable caste family had to buy all the homes in a gully because their paths were blocked by the upper caste communities. But it took years and years just to have access. Brother. A friend of his was refused admission in PhD in a university, in a premier university which he refuses to name, because he was a Dalit. And he was told as much explicitly on his face by the faculty. Brother. Till recently in his house, certain people were assigned exclusively the caste of cleaning toilets. Can we broadly agree that untouchability in present day, okay? Untouchability in the present day is definitely present in the villages at the very least, right? So we can see perhaps a clear, how many of you practice untouchability, guys? None. Zero. We are untouchability mukt Bharat, or so it seems. Or if I may draw this inference, perhaps urban India, okay, and it is a qualified inference that urban India is perhaps free of untouchability. Why? See, a lot has changed for sure since Ambedkar's times. Clearly, we are not living in the same times as Ambedkar was, 1930s or 50s. 7 decades since independence, and a lot has changed, some of which is attributable directly to Ambedkar himself. So, what is the basis or the reasons for changes in the practice of untouchability and caste-related behavior? साफ बात है, the constitution which expressly prohibits untouchability under Article 17. It also throws open specifically all public places and wells, etc. to people of all castes under Article, you guys know better, 15. Okay? And you have several laws which have been passed to operationalize this constitutional provision. Prohibition of atrocities, Prevention of Atrocities, SC/ST Act, 1989. You have various other empowering provisions like reservation. for scheduled castes, again enshrined in the constitution. You have constitutional bodies like National Commission for Scheduled Castes. Yes or no? So all of these constitutional and legal provisions, also modern education. So that changes people's thinking. Why you guys do not subscribe to the notions of ritual purity and pollution? Because you've received large measure, because you have received modern education. Yes or no? Also, friends, democratic politics based on the principle of one man, one vote, universal adult franchise, irrespective of caste. It throws open all public offices to people across castes and those communities which are more numerous. They also have a particular say in the political system. Democracy is in that sense inclusive. The spread of scientific temper and rationality. Yes or no? So people stop thinking in terms of notions like purity, pollution. Religion loses its importance because of the spread of scientific temper. Yes or no? There have been various socio-religious reform movements which have campaigned against the practice of untouchability or segregation of castes, like self-respect, Arya Samaj, Brahmo Samaj, numerous, a whole plethora of. Yes or no? Yes or no? You have various anti-caste or anti-untouchability campaigns and movements. Like those of Bapu, like those of Ambedkar, Sri Narayan Guru, Periyar, criticisms of caste system by Phule. Yes or no? And scores of anti-caste activists and reformers. Also, industrialization and urbanization also weaken the practice of caste and untouchability. Like Andre Bete says, it is practically not feasible to maintain physical distance in an urban public transport. You cannot be mindful of rules governing commensality or food exchange in urban areas. Yes or no? So urban social life is very different. Also, you have anonymity in urban areas. People don't know my caste unless and until I shout from the rooftops that I'm Banya. Yes or no? Right? Also, there is a change in terms of underlying values. And that principle of hierarchy as being the defining feature of our social life, people are gradually veering towards accepting the principle of equality. So इन सब factors की वजह से caste-based behavior, caste consciousness, and the practice of untouchability have been significantly declined, नहीं कहूंगा, significantly impacted. ठीक है? With that, on a slightly abrupt note, we are done for the day. And we continue tomorrow. Priyanshi, the answer to your question, yes, but it's only partial. We'll be discussing more on it tomorrow, so you'll have more content. Yes, Pranav, I will be sharing a write-up on Andre Bete. Pooja, Bete's writings can be criticized on more grounds, specifically because he says caste is increasingly irrelevant. So we will discuss tomorrow how caste retains relevance. Atirek, I will be taking up Dipankar Gupta later on. What is horizontal and vertical solidarity in caste, Harshita? We'll be discussing in a future discussion or future topic. Sanjay, what is your question? Please repeat. Mohan, that is an interpretation one could make. Sanjay, I'm waiting for your question, beta. No, not necessarily. No? The problem is when there is a disjunction between what people expect. One second. Dumo and dominant class fill in the blanks. You will have to read out the. I had discussed those fill in the blanks, brother. Dominant caste it is, Sanjay. I have discussed all the fill in the blanks. If you have any specific, just write that whole sentence with the fill in the blank. I'll try to fill it up because I'm not carrying the handout right now. एक second देना guys. There are Brahmins who are highest. Rishu, when Andre Vete talks about cumulative inequality in the past, it is taking broad caste categories in mind. For example, the Dvij castes were upper caste and they were also wealthy and politically well established. Right? Shudras were the intermediate caste groups with limited of both money and power. And the kya naam hai tumhara? Untouchable castes were the lower castes who were also powerless and landless. So that. Chali, thank you, friends.